So, I think we should get started with this week's big brand new release, Fantastic Four. And I will say before we start, let's be fair, let's be reasonable, let's not just, let's give it a full, honest review. Go.
That's what I always do.
Well, I'm just making sure it doesn't turn into
a rant.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna go.
A rant is fine, but we've got to give information as well. We've got to be.
We do.
We've got to be clear.
That's what we pride ourselves on.
Yeah, that's what
exactly.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I hope Josh Trank never makes another film again.
Damn.
No, I'm joking. Right. Yeah. I wanted to go right off the pace there. So literally, if anybody listening, anybody has had even the slightest hype for this, then please let us know, at all. If you'd looked at a trailer, seen a photo, read a synopsis, and you'd said, looks alright, I might go see that instead of one of the many other films out right now, then please do get in touch because, well, I'm interested.
Hello. When the cast was announced, I was like, yeah, this could work. Kate Mara, good actress. Miles Teller had a good one good film in Whiplash. Michael B. Jordan was great in film about the trains. Forgot what it's called.
The film about the trains. Fruitvale Station.
The
film about the trains.
It's not even about the trains. That's the worst bit.
The film about the trains.
And then Jamie Bell, obviously, as a kid, was great in Billy Elliot. It's sort of about trains.
Well, trains are in it. Trains feature.
Film about the trains.
Trains
right.
do feature in the film.
Moving on.
Yes.
Right.
But yeah, I was semi-hyped because the cast is decent, and then obviously all the extra stuff after that, and then you totally lose enthusiasm. But yeah, I'll say that I was semi-interested.
I cared maybe 5 seconds when I saw the cast was announced, and then every trailer and picture and everything else that's come out has been a disaster and a bigger disaster as it's completely barreled on, and it's been probably the most negative sort of. I guess it is hype, the most negative hype or sort of the build-up to a film that's been released in a long time. I mean, this has just been, it's been an absolute tirade.
It's been doomed, and that's not a pun.
Stop it.
It's been doomed from the start.
Because if you intend to do this,
that wasn't intentional. I promise. Yeah, but it was doomed from the start. Anyway. So literally everything was it's just been dreadful from start to finish. I mean, from the very first beginning that they said obviously Michael B. Jordan was cast as Johnny Storm. He's white in the comics. I think that's what the whole controversy was about, and he's cast as a black man, and obviously that's not allowed because comic fans say they have to be exactly the same as they are in the comics. And also obviously revealed that Dr. Doom would be an anti-social blogger who uses the name Doom on an online chat room. That one, even though I know nothing about him himself, that made me shake my head in complete stupidity. And then obviously there was the rumour that Josh Trank was going to film the entire movie in handheld, like Chronicle,
but which would have been even worse because it would have been horrendous. And then everything else in between has just been horrendous. Obviously, even more recently, we've had Miles Teller saying that this wouldn't be one of those films that gets 70 or 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. He's also said that the cast hadn't even seen it, which is kind of normal, but still disappointing.
That one's okay.
There was a review embargo. There was obviously
that was lifted on Wednesday.
Reshoots, which supposedly only ended last month. A massive amount of film.
And you can see where they are in the film as well.
According to some anonymous people who've worked in the VFX department, they've said that the up to 30 to 40 minutes of the film has been totally cut, which you can definitely see in the film. And obviously the rumours that there was doing the VFX shots right at the last minute as well. So basically, and obviously they pulled 3D as well. They had originally,
which is never a good
So why
sign.
would you do that?
Ooh.
That's like an extra $20 million at least.
Well, that's them knowing it's not going to make any money. Yeah.
120 million people.
Yeah.
This cost $120 million.
To the film itself, did it deserve all of this hype? Well, negative hype, yes, because it's.
Well, obviously we all remember the horrible Fantastic Four from back in 2005, and its horrible sequel 2 years later. And as a lot of people have been saying, this could have been a chance to start again. Good cast on board, enthusiastic young director.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, because I don't like. Literally everyone I've seen has so far said that there's been sort of the desire for the Fantastic Four to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and obviously that's where all of the big boys are playing right now, and the lesser boys, in the case of Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man. That's what they've done so well, building up these properties. But you know, it shouldn't that shouldn't affect the fact that this could have been a good movie on its own. You know, they could have stood alone just because, you know, deal with it. They don't have the rights. So, well, no, it's fair enough, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, just because
I understand that.
they shouldn't have to just make an awful film and say just make the rights go back to Marvel. I mean, people are saying that for X-Men, but nowhere near as loudly as they are for these. Just because the fact it could be terrible, and it is, but we'll get to that. Like. It doesn't mean it couldn't have been its own entity in its own right. It couldn't have stand alone and be a decent film in its own right. But, you know, obviously people were just seeming out to get it from the very beginning. I was part of that. I was sort of standing from afar, really. But you could definitely see that people were definitely out to get this, waiting for it to die. I mean, I've seen reviews where they're saying, like, the thing that they were looking forward to most was the reviews itself, which is not exactly a good stance to take as a critic. But, you know, I was interested to see it because it is atrocious, like, the fact that there's been so much bad press around it, and it's got 11% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And you could kind of guess that it was going to be about that much.
So, to the film itself, directed by Josh Trank, obviously, I think it was 2008 Chronicle.
Ooh, wasn't that that long ago?
No, 2011.
About 2012.
2012 or so.
Doesn't matter. Wasn't that long ago.
But it was a really good film. You know, it was inventive. It told story of these young lads who gained superpowers, but obviously they couldn't control them. Featuring Dane DeHaan, who you might recognise from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I haven't seen that, but you know he's a really promising little actor. He was great in that, and obviously that was just sort of a cautionary tale about how power can corrupt. And that was filmed with the handheld style, and that was a really good film. You know, it was inventive, and you know you could see that he had flourishes as a director, Josh Trank. But that was probably the biggest positive for me actually for this, just seeing the fact that he was coming on board to do it, and that he's come to a lot of people have. I mean, literally, there's just people just believe in every malicious rumor about him. People are saying that he's bad working with on set, that he couldn't keep a handle on the film that he was in too deep, and apparently like he couldn't handle the stress of Star Wars anthology spin-off as well that he was doing. So the Boba Fett one, I think that's what he was doing. So
well, again, it's a case of, you know, it's another small director like Colin Trevorrow, where they've been brought in because they know they can be used as a puppet. But they know they can be beaten around by the studio and there's nothing they can do about it. Yeah,
but I do wonder if it's, I mean, if he had the same passion for the franchise as Colin Trevorrow did for the original Jurassic Park, obviously.
Who has any enthusiasm for Fantastic Four apart from comic book fans?
Well, I mean, they're supposedly great comics, so I mean, I believe they're famous for a reason. So I'm guessing, you know, they didn't deserve those two awful films in the 2000s and this one right now. So we're being very unsubtle here, but
I mean, the Stanley's babies, aren't they?
Exactly, they're like the first people Stanley made, I think, alongside Batman. Not Batman.
Batman.
Okay, I'm not a comic man. Okay, leave me alone. But I think they have like the Fantastic Four, and then there was I don't think X-Men was his actually, but like
X-Men's Marvel. Yeah.
No, it is Stanley.
They're his characters. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Damn.
See, obviously there was the 2005 one which was terrible and the 2007 one which was terrible, but at least they were fun, and I'll get to this because this is probably the biggest criticism about it. So obviously you know what the Fantastic Four, they're the superhero family pretty much. So obviously you've got in this reboot, it's a very different story to what it originally was in the first two films anyway. You've got, we open on childhood friends Reed Richards, played by Miles Teller, and Ben Grimm, who was played by Jamie Bell, who I did not know was Geordie and did not know was the kid from Billy Elliot until you told me today.
Yeah,
that's where you'll recognise Jamie Bell from, presumably. And they've been working on this sort of prototype teleporter since their young childhood, which has attracted the attention of a professor called Franklin Storm, played by Reggie Cathy. I recognise him from a lot of things, but
House of Cards.
House of Cards, there you go, House of Cards, of course, yeah. He's the director of a foundation called the Baxter Foundation, which has basically been allowing it's a government-sponsored research institute which is bringing in sort of these young prodigies, acting like a university, a place for them to hone their skills and become better at what they want to do and sort of change the world pretty much. So they're recruited to join him, and well, Reed is at least, and Storm's children, which are scientist Sue Storm, played by Kate Mara, who's just adorable in every way. I don't even she was poorly chosen for this film. I can't wait to get to the Rippin', but the Rippin', yeah,
hold it in for now.
Who's adorable. So she's the adopted daughter of Reggie Harvey's character, and technician Johnny Storm, played by Michael B. Jordan, who, you know, just written off just because he was, you know, just because he's black doesn't mean it could have been, you know. I don't see why people could have why people attracted themselves to that. I know people want the characters to stay as they were, true to the comics, but I don't see why that would, you know, affect it at all.
And obviously we saw the interview, the very famous interview now, where the radio presenters, you know, say that's like their first question: why are you black and why are you white, and how does that work? Because they hadn't actually seen the film as well. It is referenced in the film that she's
it is
adopted.
referenced, but like it shouldn't make any difference. You know,
doesn't make
they're
any
trying to tell their own
difference at
story
all.
that if he's black or white, it does not make a single difference.
I'm sure there's a Michael Jackson song like that.
It don't matter.
It don't matter. It don't matter.
Just
anyway, I'll stop.
So this prototype is called the Quantum Gate, which is basically going to open the dimension of time and space and allow them to enter the new universe or reality or planet. They never really make quite specific what it is. They say universe, then they say dimension, then they say another planet. Like, I mean, it's very strange.
That's because they're still writing the script in post.
Yeah, which is this Quantum Gate has been created by Dr. Storm's wayward protege Victor Von Doom, played by Tony Kebbell, who was most recently in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes last year, which you remember. He was great as the villain Cobra, and that's obviously CGI mocap. He's fully fleshed out in this. You get to see him in his full glory. He's a lot younger than I thought he was. I thought he was sort of middle age, but he looks about 25, 30 in this.
He's early 30s.
Yeah, I didn't think he was that young.
But everyone's obviously made it look younger because it's an origin story. In this.
But obviously, and they come under flack by the facility supervisor, Dr. Allen, played by Tim Blake Nelson, who I always see in films, but I never ever remember his name. I think he was in Zero Dark 30, actually. That's one thing I might remember him in.
Oh, Brother War out there.
What?
Oh, Brother War out there.
Oh, there you go. But but basically, I mean, the biggest thing this is, like, you don't need to know any more about the plot. They do trials. They end up getting to the dimension, and stuff goes down, and they get the powers. You've seen it all in the trailer, but the biggest thing that this film has against it is everything, because this is it's probably the worst superhero film I've seen, and that's.
I mean, consider the high caliber that they are. I mean, Marvel have really set the actual Marvel, not Fox Marvel, have really set the precedent for these kind of, and even Marvel's worst films, Iron Man 2, Thor 2, they're not bad.
No, they're not bad at all. They're solid 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10s. They're just they're thoroughly average. But even the films like the Daredevil film, which was an absolute atrocity, and obviously Batman and Robin, which was fun enough to watch. I
used to love it when I was a kid. I loved it so much.
Yeah, no, it was just a great time. This literally, it is the blandest film you could possibly make about a family of superheroes involving a man who can light himself on fire, a man who is an orange rock monster, a man who can stretch himself, and a woman who can make herself invisible and use telekinesis. Like, I don't understand how you make a film about those characters not at least bright and colourful and at least capture your attention for a little while.
Yeah.
This is not going to capture the attention of anybody, whether that's true cinephiles or people who, like, under 5-year-olds that even, who want to see bright colours. It's not going to capture anybody's attention at all. It's just going to bore everybody to death. For the cast individually, I mean, Miles Teller, obviously, he's I guess seeing a prodigy as well as his character himself. He's a prodigy as an actor, really, isn't he? I mean, he's sort of young. He's getting all these.
He's not as young as you think he is. Like, I'm sure he's.
I mean, he's like 22, isn't he? 23.
He's nearly 30s.
No way.
Yeah.
Nearly 30.
He's been around for quite a while, and
Damn.
I mean, you think Whiplash is kind of, as I said, as we were leaving the cinema, it's the only film I've seen him in where he's good. And you think, it's Miles Teller from Whiplash. It's not. It's Miles Teller from what is it, 21 and Over? That horrible
21 and Over. That's what you
Project X kind of film.
You saw him in something else, didn't you?
I've seen him in a few things.
There was a comedy, wasn't it, last year?
Yeah. Typically, before Whiplash, he was a comedy actor, and a bad comedy actor at that.
But he's definitely a property now, that to say the least. He's definitely being noticed.
He's in the system now.
And I was expecting him at least to anchor this into it, but he just doesn't, because he plays the. I mean, at least Owen Grufford in the other films had a bit of presence about him. He had a bit of wit about him. He had charm. You like Miles Teller's character in this. You root for him a little bit. He does play him sort of that aloof sort of nerd that that people can relate to. But he just doesn't have any sort of gravitas or presence about him that you really believe he could be a superhero or the superhero of the Marvel Universe. I mean, he's up there with like Tony Stark and the other guys, as the biggest name out there in the Marvel comic universe. But he just doesn't bring any. I mean, near the climax, he has plenty of big speeches and big lines, and he just doesn't bring any sort of
conviction,
punch or oomph to any of that. There's nothing, and that we were seeing that all around on the way back to the recording studio to do this show today. That none of the cast look like they want to be here, and that is certainly endemic of the problems that has been going around with this film, because you can clearly see, and if you notice that they're not having fun with it, you're thinking, is it because of the troubled production, or do they not really give a crap in the world? That's what you really got to notice, because if they're not having fun at all, or they're not getting into their characters as well as they should be, you just can't get behind them at all. And that's exactly where this film struggles, because if you don't centre that core of having a family of superheroes, you're not going to succeed at all. That's the biggest thing. I mean, so obviously he just doesn't bring as much as I thought he was going to do better. Kate Moore obviously is lovable and a great actress, and she plays sort of the parallel to Reed. She's obviously a prodigy as well, the adopted daughter of Reggie Harvey's character, but she also as well just aloof, just not brings nothing to it. She's just waste of talent. She lots of scenes where she just bites scenery and just generally does things that she's a total waste. She's in the background most of it.
Yeah.
She doesn't really do much to affect the plot. And Jamie Bell, poor guy. I mean,
you've reminded me of Sigourney Weaver in Exodus. She's literally a face to cut to.
Exactly.
For some of the scenes, it's literally just we've already cut to them. We'll cut to her now.
Literally close up reaction. Boom.
Yeah, exactly. Like
that's all it was.
Jamie Bell. Obviously, you were expecting him to bring sort of the chalk and the cheese of the relationship with Reed, but he just doesn't at all because he
doesn't really get much to do.
No,
he doesn't. He barely gets any other rock and the cheese, I guess. But
he doesn't get much to do before he gets turned into
exactly. I mean, and you do feel for him, but then he gets his voice modulated and he's all CGI, and you just don't care anymore. Like, I mean, and obviously, and then there's Michael B. Jordan, who, obviously completely against what people were expecting, he is the best part of the whole film. Like, his performance, out of everybody's performance, it is the best part of it because he is the most likeable. He is the one having the most fun. He is the one who you can clearly see is embracing the character.
He's the, if any, the comedic relief.
Yeah, exactly.
The if any. If there's any at all, it's him.
Like, I mean, you can literally see through his character that he's literally G'ing up the rest of the cast, like, come on guys, we've got to, get into it, get into these powers, and like, he's literally trying to rally them up, and they're like, yeah, let's go.
Just, 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes.
And even that's used to like a terrible end.
Exactly, but so I mean, they go to this dimension, they get their powers that way, and actually, in the original they got the space station. I remember rightly. Yeah, there was like radiation, obviously, so that they're going with a bit different this time. But I mean, they get back, and then it's just all so muddled and everything. I mean, it is an improvement on some of the awful CGI that was in the originals, like Michael Chiklis's bodysuit, that looked terrible, but this also looks terrible, the CGI thing as well. They're both films with awful CGI that really should be improved by now. Like, I mean, there's a 10-year difference between that and this, and they don't look any better. I mean, obviously they had the latex bodysuits in that, and now they've gone for the dark, gritty black ones in this. And that
mesh.
Before we get to the proper problems, that is the biggest letdown of the whole thing. Is the tone. Dark and gritty does not equal a good film. Okay, you don't need to go dark and gritty.
Is this Christopher Nolan's fault for Batman?
Yes, it is.
Is everybody trying to take a leaf out of his
book now? It's Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan's fault, because they have made this a problem, a true problem. And when you've got such a lexicon of themes and dynamics that you can go through, you shouldn't have to just go, look, we're going to make it dark and gritty. Right? People are going to die. We've got to make sure that people understand that this is a serious world and they're grounded. We've got a guy who's basically a rock, and we've got a guy who can stretch his limbs a lot, and I wonder what else he can stretch. But you've got to think, like, you've got to think that you don't have to, if you're going to go for a dark tone, use it. Okay, you don't have to. You can't just have a good film just because you're going dark, serious, and grounded. Okay, the Batman films work because it would work in the sense of the real world. You made him feel that Christian Bale's Batman was a character. He was a real human. He wasn't just this sort of bat very much. He wasn't just this. You could feel he was a real superhero working in a real world. He was grounded. In this, when you've got a man made of rock, and a man who can stretch his limbs, and a woman who can go invisible, a man who can set him on fire, you can't go grounded with that unless you're going to make it work with a cast of characters that works.
I don't think even Christopher Nolan, he would struggle.
Nothing could save this.
He would struggle to make this gritty.
That is problem number one, the tone. It's just such a dark and awful colour palette. It's just devoid of any sort of life or balance. And you want an alien world, and it looks like a quarry in wheels, like Doctor Who films. It's nothing. Okay, it's boring. It's bland.
And then the other location is a big sort of laboratory warehouse.
Exactly. I mean, it's just grey. I hate it. I hate the fact that things are going so dark and gritty. Obviously, I'm looking forward to how DC do with their sort of stuff, but they obviously have got Nolan on board as a producer.
Suicide Squad and Batman is dark by default.
Exactly, but they're still got the fun elements in them. They still know when it's time to be funny. There was still plenty of humour in the Batman films. This is devoid of any humour apart from off-paced jokes and awful one-liners that trying to get emotion out of the characters. And then we get to the second major problem, which is the fact that the cast have no chemistry. I mean, you get to see the main four together for maybe 20 minutes at the end. Most of the time they're in solitary confinement after their incident, when the government is sort of trying to find out what they do, and they just never get any time to properly gel. I mean, Kate Mara and Reed Richards, and Miles Teller's romance just doesn't go anywhere. They never lead onto that.
Sequel.
There's a big fuss about when Reed Richards leaves the leaves the facility after the first accident, and he tries to go and find answers, and he sort of abandons Ben Grimm's friend. Obviously, he said he was going to come back, but he doesn't. They do a big thing about that and how he's angry that he left him. That never gets resolved. They do a whole thing with Michael B. Jordan and his dad. That never gets resolved. They do a whole thing where the whole cast are trying to deal with their powers. That never gets resolved.
You've seen Marvel films before.
I mean,
you know that this is all little tags for the next one.
And again, that is ultimately it's not the biggest problem, but the biggest gripe with it.
We still haven't got the biggest problem, have we?
Exactly. This is the fact that I'm leading on to the biggest problem.
Okay,
I see everything's the biggest problem, but another problem is the fact that there's just so many problems, man. The fact,
listeners, do you think there's any problems with Fantastic Four yet?
The fact that the one decent thing that this film had in the fact is that Josh Trank admitted it has the Cronenberg influences, but it never builds on them. It has one or two decent bits, where it's showing the body horror, and I like that, the fact that they were dealing with the powers. They say, Kate Mara specifically says that these are physical conditions, these are afflictions. They're not powers to be used for good. They are bad things that happen and they've got to be cured. And then they abandon that within 20 minutes. It's like, alright guys, we've got to use the powers for good now. We've got to be properly, we've got to save the world and everything. They never build up on that. That could have been decent, emotional conflict that could have brought the gang together, but they don't. They haven't done anything at all. It's just a total waste. Everything in this film just feels like a complete and utter waste. From I mean, nothing's memorable at all. You don't remember any of these scenes. You won't remember any dialogue. You won't remember anything at all. You won't remember the score. You won't remember the cinematography. You won't remember anything about this film.
I will confess that as soon as we got back here, I had forgot.
Yeah.
I have had to rack my brain to think about anything that happened.
It's just a paint by numbers superhero book. The best way I can describe it is that it's a film that is a 100-minute trailer for a film. It has the most rushed climax that
film that we'll see in 2018. Probably.
Exactly, yeah. Like it has the most rushed climax that you will ever see in the other dimension. Literally, I mean, it's literally. I mean, you were saying it as a boss battle, weren't you, Joe? Pretty much.
It's basically that's all. There's terrible pacing issues. We're going to have literally nearly the whole movie discovering the powers, which is terribly done, and then we're going to have the end boss battle.
Exactly. I mean, it's bad enough that Toby Kebbell's chewing the scenery with some awful lines as Doctor Doom, which is subtly hinted at. Get the sarcasm there, please, everybody.
Yep.
And it's bad enough that he's doing that, but then to have the worst resolution for his character possible and to give him literally nothing to do, he's probably more forgettable than any of the Marvel villains. Even Christopher Eccleston's one in Thor 2, which is seeing something, and even when he gets like 2 lines in that. But yeah, it's a complete waste of everything. It's just a shambles. It is an utter shambles.
Yep.
In every single way.
Joe, on the way out, you were saying that you could probably give this the shortest review ever.
Terrible pacing, except for a sequel. Read the Wikipedia page. There we go.
It's completely.
That's all you have to do.
It's maddeningly lame and unimaginative. It brings absolutely nothing.
Everything you're thinking about, from Marvel's, what they do, setting up new stories and everything is end boss battle. Exactly. Everything's there, but it's terribly paced.
Got to be set up.
It's probably the worst paced of the superhero movies I've ever seen. It's like everything is just put onto the what's it called again? The Ex Machina. No, origin story.
Yeah.
Everything's put in the origin story.
I'm so bored of the origin stories
and
now.
then we'll just settle for a last fight. And there we'll go.
And there is the biggest problem. There is the biggest problem. It's complete. It brings nothing. Brings absolutely nothing to the table.
Even in the origin, it's just like there's nothing memorable. Yeah. It's just okay. We're gonna blah blah blah.
New likable characters. Nope. No. New likable set pieces. No. New quotable lines. Nope.
I can't remember anything.
No.
I can't.
It's
just like it's like the whole idea of that setting is that's all you can think about. You can't actually remember anything in the film. You can't remember anything about that kind of just story.
Just how hateable it is.
Just
intensely hateable. God. I did sort of want this to do. I didn't beg any negativity against it, but it just nothing.
Like it could have at least Ant-Man or got some character background or something,
give
or
some colour to it. Bring some life.
Like anything they talk about doesn't mean anything.
And Josh Trank brings absolutely no visual flair to it at all. You can't tell it was a Josh Trank film at all. You can see the sort of shaky cam from Chronicle, but it doesn't stand out at all amongst the muddled CGI and the awful pacing. Just a terrible, terrible film.
Is that a recommend or not?
Definitely.
No.
I mean, I can't.
You can't even recommend it as it's so bad it's good.
Beat me to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not even funny.
Can't even drink and watch this and enjoy it. That's how bad it is.
Unless you want to drink yourself into a coma. I don't recommend that. Like I said last week.
We don't do that. We have already spoken about this. Which was worse, Jupiter Ascending or this?
This.
Because
I
wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
But it wasn't. No.
Yeah.
On our way going in this morning to see it, the guy checked the tickets and said, "Have you got any recording equipment?" We all obviously didn't. That's kind of the last thing Fox needs, because this is going to make no money.
No.
And then the guy says, "Enjoy the film."
Yeah.
And I was like, no.
120 million budget, and you wonder where it all went. It can't have gone on all the cast salaries.
I mean, you were saying, like, how many minutes got cut? Like 30, 45?
Like, the rumour was like 30, 40.
Like,
I couldn't have sat through 30, 40 more minutes.
No.
Unless
At least it would have made more sense.
If it would have improved it, or
yeah.
done some other things, like character background and
Like,
dialogue that actually meant something,
it takes 40
instead of getting
minutes for
resolved in the
something to
next, like,
actually
10
happen.
minutes.
You know, 40 minutes to take to the actual event to happen. And
Yeah.
at least the original got there pretty quick, you know.
That was terrible.
Oh my
That was
god.
really, really bad. I didn't.
It's such an awful
Nothing.
film.
Would you say it's one of the worst of the year?
Yes.
Definitely.
It's going to be in my bottom 5.
One of those films where you think, you know, I'll pay money for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crucially, you know, and that's the biggest slant I can give to this film. Not the biggest problem, the biggest slant. It's not even horribly offensive.
No.
It's just
I just found it incredible.
it's just incredibly.
As I said to you guys,
horrible.
I didn't have too much of a problem with it until those last 15 minutes, and then
Yeah.
it does become one of the worst everything ever. It's one of the worst endings. It's one of the
With
worst
the most hateable ending
set
of a film.
pieces, and it is pretty hideous. It's pretty horrible.
And that's a shame, because, you know, it could have been something good. But
I think the problem may lie with the characters. It might. I mean, you think they are ridiculous? It might be time to stop.
script rewrites, more work on the CGI, work on the pacing, change director, so everything.